BUTCHYKIDVIDEOS. Now, if you spend enough time on YouTube back in the early 2000s, you may be really familiar with him and his channel and his content. You know, basically he was the guy who was really infamous for...
Holy shit, it's a Bigfoot!
Yeah, that type of videos. The whole offensive paranormal parody type of videos, you know, where he would parody, you know, those really questionable paranormal sighting videos that were all over the place in early 2000s YouTube. Yeah, and he would basically make it kind of over the top, inappropriate, offensive, you know, with the type of jokes he would use and swear words and stuff like that, you know. And it would be about some sort of paranormal creature, you know, Bigfoot especially, and aliens, you know, Frogman, Dogman, you know, werewolves, Slender Man, you know, ghost. You know, he would, yeah, that was just some examples of the type of paranormal parody he would make, you know. He would see one of those creatures and, you know, make jokes and say, holy shit, it's a Bigfoot, or whatever it was, and yeah, over-the-top situations, and obviously, you know, parody and fake stuff, and it was funny, and it was and still is funny and hilarious. I still go back and watch some of his content, you know, some of the good old classics, because they're still funny, they're still hilarious. But a few years ago, he started complaining that his content, that his videos were being shadow banned or censored by YouTube and Google. Yeah. And the main reason he said that this was happening was because he was a conservative, apparently. Like, what? That's just ridiculous. Like, your content, your videos, your whole identity on YouTube wasn't the fact that you were conservative. No, like, don't get me wrong. Yeah, you might have sprinkled some conservative humor in some of your videos, you know, like the whole Bigfoot voting for or endorsing Donald Trump, you know, stuff like that. But it wasn't the main aspect of your videos. It wasn't the main factor of your videos. It wasn't your whole YouTube identity. It barely was a thing in your videos. But, yeah. I don't know why he thinks this. I don't. I guess maybe he's just afraid to admit the real reason why he's not getting as many views as he used to. And I guess that's because he had a niche, you know. He was the offensive paranormal parody guy. He had a niche. That's what he was. And I guess that kind of style of videos, that whole thing, just doesn't really do as well as it used to. It isn't really as popular as it used to be. Because it used to be really popular. It really did. Like, you know, especially the offensive parody videos, they were really big back in the early 2000s. And those questionable paranormal sighting videos, they were also really big back in the 2000s. And so basically he just combined those two, and that's why he was so, popular back then. That's why his videos did really well back then, is because they were a big thing back in the early 2000s. But nowadays, not so much. They just don't do as well, they're just not as, popular anymore. And it's sad, yes, it really is sad. I wish that kind of stuff was still kind of popular. Because it kind of deserves to be, at least somewhat, But sadly it isn't, It's just not popular anymore. It's just, it doesn't do as well, and it's just how it is. It's sad, but that's the truth, You had a niche that did really well for a while, but nowadays it doesn't do so well. It's not as popular, and that's the sad truth of it. But yeah, I just wish he would realize this, instead of being all conspiratorial and thinking it's some sort of conspiracy out to get him and censor his videos because he's a conservative, apparently. Like, that's just ridiculous. And yeah, I just wish he would realize this, but sadly he probably won't. He'll probably stick to the same kind of mindset of, I'm being censored, I'm being shadow banned because I'm a conservative. Like, he'll probably just stick with that, because a lot of conservative content creators and influencers and stuff like that will stick with that, even if it's not the truth, because they can't handle, the actual truth. But yeah.